everyone, to the April meeting of the Metropolitan Policy Committee. We're so happy that you're here. And given the fact that in a couple items down the list, we're going to be appointing a new chair, I won't be able to give you those quippy little quotes at the end. So I'm going to give you one at the beginning of the meeting, reading some things from the Dalai Lama that said the other day that be kind whenever possible, because it's always possible. So anyway, I thought that was pretty good. So welcome again. Let's call this meeting to order. It's April 3rd, 2025. Are there any adjustments to the agenda, Mr. Thompson?
None at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Any adjustments from the members? Seeing none, let's move on. Is there any of those folks wishing to comment from the public online at this time? I see no hands raised. Paul, do you have anyone?
Commissioner, I am pausing only because we just had a new attendee join. This person is logged in by the name of Ginger Pan, and I just enabled the ability to speak. So if you would like to testify at this point, please let us know.
Hey, Paul, this is Brandon Melton. Ginger's one of our interns, and I invited her to participate in the meeting.
Thank you, Brandon. I was not aware that was a person from LTD.
Should have given you a heads up. Sorry about that.
That's fine. So, Chair, we don't have anybody wishing to provide public comment.
Okay, and we don't want to throw Ginger under the bus on our first meeting, so well done. Thank you again. Our fifth item on there is to approve the February 6, 2025 MPC minutes. If there isn't any corrections, if there is, please state now if there is. If not, we'll move forward, assuming all of that passes unanimously. Any corrections? Seeing none, minutes approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And then the thing you've always been waiting for now, number 6 item on our list, the pageantry, the commercials, all the money that's been spent for the person running for the next board chair of Metropolitan Policy Committee. I will take nominations for the chair positions at this point.
Whose turn is it to be chair? Isn't it the City of Eugene's? Then I nominate Councillor Groves.
Very good. That was so easy. Good job. Councillor Groves, you accept the nomination?
Yes, Chair, I do.
Awesome. Thank you for your service and for your volunteering and keeping that hand raised high. We appreciate that. So I guess at this point, we can just have a vote. All those in favor of Councillor Groves becoming our next Metropolitan Policy Committee chair, please indicate with a thumbs up or an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Awesome. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And I will virtually pass the largest gavel I can hand over to you, Councillor Groves, on the Zoom screen. So if you wouldn't mind taking over and appointing a new vice chair, you have the meeting, sir. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your service this past year. And you can still feed in your quips if you so desire. Okay, now we'll open nominations for vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
Can I go ahead and nominate Councillor Blackwell since she's not here?
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand, thumb, or say aye. It appears to be unanimous. Congratulations, Vice Chair Blackwell. Okay, buzzing right along here. We are now on to item 7, Metropolitan Planning Organization MPO issues. And staff? Looks like Dan Callister and Paul Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am going to turn this over to, well, actually, if I could, I'm going to back up for a second, Chair Groves. After we elect the MPC chair and vice chair, we also have on the agenda appointing the 2 MPC members to serve on the Oregon MPO Consortium for this calendar year, to serve on OMPOC. If you'd like me to give a little bit of background, since we have 1 or 2 members that are new.
If you could, please, and I apologize for missing that.
No problem. So the Oregon MPO Consortium was formed about a dozen years ago by LCOG and the other MPOs. LCOG also staffs OMPOC. OMPOC is comprised of 2 members from each of the 8 MPOs in Oregon, and they meet quarterly. We generally discuss items of statewide interest to the MPOs, legislative items, other timely items. ODOT often helps populate that OMPOC agenda. And we appoint the 2 members from MPC to OMPOC at the start of each calendar year. We're a little behind this year, but that's okay. Right now, neither of the 2024 OMPOC members from MPC are here or present. Councilor Moe is no longer on MPC this year, and Susan Cox from LTD is not present today. So really, this is an open slate for 2 new members. Chair, that's my background.
Thank you. So we need to have nominations and vote on representatives for us to the MPO. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes, to the MPO consortium. And again, the consortium meets quarterly. It typically is on a Friday for anywhere from a 4 to 5 hour meeting, and it's virtual, so there's no travel involved.
Great, thank you. Do we have a nomination for our nominations for our MPO representative? Commissioner Farr.
Well, this is subject to accepting the nomination. I would nominate Lane County Commissioner Lovell.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Lovell has been nominated to be our MPO representative.
I second it.
Seconded by Mayor Van Gordon. Do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Commissioner Lovell. Great. Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Do we have any opposition?
It's always opposition.
It appears unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, Commissioner Lovell, and thank you, Commissioner Farr, for filling the void there. All righty.
Chair.
Yes, Paul?
If I may, again, we should attempt to appoint 2 MPC members to serve on OMPOC. So
that's right.
Commissioner Lovell for filling 1. We don't have any LTD members present today. I'm going to throw out an idea if I can.
I'm LTD.
Oh, I'm sorry. LTD Board Member Knox. You are indeed an LTD member, and we often like having either transit or small city representation at OMPOC to balance out the larger metropolitan cities. So we not only have LTD Board Member Knox, but we have Coburg Mayor Bell that just joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Paul. With that, do we have a nomination for a second representative to the MPO? Commissioner Farr.
I would nominate LTD Board Member Pete Knox.
Okay, Pete Knox has been nominated, LTD Board Member. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Pete, do you accept?
I do.
Excellent. All in favor, signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? It appears to be unanimous. Congratulations, Pete. Thank you for being a second representative on the MPO. Okay, anything else I missed, Paul?
No, there isn't. I'll just close. No, nothing else, Chair, but I will just close by letting Board Member Knox and Commissioner Lovell know that Kelly Clark at LCOG currently staffs OMPOC, and she'll be sending you some information to bring you up to speed.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 7E, other MPO information. Do we have an ODOT representative today, Vidal? Vidal's not here. Bill, are you here?
I am here today, sitting in for Vidal. He had a conflict this morning.
Excellent. Can you give us an update, or is there anything to report?
No, there isn't, Chair. Thank you. Vidal did not share any updates with me to share with you this morning.
Okay, well, are there any questions from the committee to ODOT? I'm not seeing any. We will move on to input and discussion by MPC members. I guess that's kind of what I just asked for. Is there anything to come before the MPC today? Okay, we will move on. 8. Man, we're
Chair.
blowing through the agenda. Yes, Paul.
Excuse me, we still have all the items under number 7, 7A, B, C, and D. I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, right. Go back to where I was when I missed the first beat. Sorry, it's taking me a moment to get my sea legs again. I've actually done the chair position before, but I didn't come fully prepared today.
I was fully on the horse with the efficiency. I thought you did a great job, Chair.
Okay, well, we'll go back to the first item, A, under Metropolitan Planning Organization. Paul?
Thank you. And again, I am going to turn this over to Dan Collister in just a moment. I do want to note that this was originally scheduled as a draft presentation and discussion last month, but we could not achieve quorum. So today, Dan will be walking you through the Unified Planning Work Program for next year. And we are asking for the public hearing and approval today because there is a fairly tight timeline for us, ODOT, and the federal authorities to get this done. So Dan, go ahead.
Thank you. Daniel Collister, Senior Planner at Lane Council of Governments. And as Paul said, this is to talk about the MPO's draft Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal years 26 and 27. So a public hearing is requested, and we're asking MPC to approve the attached resolution that would adopt the UPWP and program the associated funding. That draft is included in the meeting materials. It is currently available for public review and comment until the public hearing closes. There have been no comments received on the draft since it was first published in February 28th. But today I want to talk a little bit about what the UPWP is and what we're asking approval for. So each year, the MPO puts together our work plan for the upcoming fiscal year. It covers a 2-year period, but only includes a budget for that first fiscal year since the funding is available on a year-to-year basis. So it's formally called the Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP for short. It is a federal requirement for all MPOs, and it includes the work that we intend to accomplish that's grouped into categories and broken down by task. It includes a rough schedule for completing those tasks and a budget for each of those elements that includes the sources of the federal and the match funding. The budget and funding information in this UPWP, as I mentioned, covers just FY26. Next year, we'll draft an addendum that will update the work plan for FY27 and include a budget for that year. That is our typical process. So the major work categories are work that's related to developing and maintaining our regional transportation plan. That's our long-range plan, or RTP. Programming and implementation, excuse me. That's essentially our transportation improvement program and identifying projects for funding. Public participation, air quality planning, modeling and data maintenance, the work related to our transportation options programs, and intergovernmental coordination. So without getting into the weeds too much, there are a couple specific tasks in this UPWP that I want to highlight that are pretty significant. Of course, our regional transportation plan, the RTP, as you've been hearing every month, and as you'll be hearing again later today, MPO staff have been working on an update of the RTP for a while now. That will be finalized and adopted this next fiscal year, as well as the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, which is developed every 3 years. And the UPWP reflects a considerable effort in FY26 as we develop and adopt the 2027 to 2030 TIP. Finally, the adoption of the UPWP not only approves our work plan, but it also amends the Transportation Improvement Program and programs federal funding for the work that's included in that work plan. So our regional planning, but also funding for regional safe routes to school, and for our transportation options programs. That's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any, but again, the action that's recommended of MPC today is to hold a public hearing and to approve the resolution 2025-0.
Thank you, Dan. And before I open the public hearing, I just want to see if there are any MPC members that have questions of Dan. I am not seeing any. With that, I open the public hearing for this issue, weighing in on the regional transportation plan. Paul, do we have any speakers lined up?
Chair, I just double checked. There is nobody logged in other than members and staff, so nobody to testify.
Okay, with that, I close the public hearing. Are there comments from the MPC members? I'm not seeing any. With that, I think we can move on to 7C on the agenda, MPO and LCOG Regional Transportation Work Program Overview.
Chair,
Yes.
I see Mayor Bell with her hand raised, and we do need a motion on the resolution for 7.
My apologies. You just said that. Mayor Bell.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I do have a question in terms of federal funding with the changes that have recently happened administratively. Are we expecting any impacts on that? And I'll take that answer offline.
Very good. Okay, we move on to, is there a motion to approve the plan?
Chair, I've got a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'd like to move, we approve resolution 202501, the Unified Planning Work Program fiscal year 26-27 draft as written.
We have a motion from Commissioner Lovell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Pete Knox, board member from LTD. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All right. Are there any opposed? It appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we can move on to 7C, MPO and LCOG Regional Transportation Work Program Overview. Paul or Kelly Clark?
I'm going to let Kelly start in. Kelly, do you want to do 7B or 7C first?
We could start with 7B, the regional transportation plan, and then move a little bit higher level to our overall work plan, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Clark. I'm a principal transportation planner for the Central Lane MPO, and I will provide a little update on our regional transportation plan. I'm going to share my screen here for a PowerPoint. Okay, are we all seeing my screen now? It's always the check that needs to be done here. So today we wanted to just give an overall project status and update for the Regional Transportation Plan update. The key components that we're working on and bringing to you today are our project list update process and where we are with that, a report of the community engagement that we've conducted to date, and then introducing a topic that we haven't talked a lot about, but is also part of this process, which is the congestion management process, another federal requirement of us. And then we'll provide an overall status or schedule update and next steps. And please feel free to ask any questions as I'm walking through this. Happy to have it interactive. So for our overall project status, we're working on drafting the project list And that's in a lot of work with all of the staff that are representing your agencies. We're working on, well, I'll get more into that in a little bit, but at the end of the day, once we have a project list, we'll work on our air quality conformity determination. So that's in the work as well. We're producing a system performance report where we evaluate the system's gaps and needs. And that will lead to a refinement of our goals, objectives, and performance measures. It's coming from both a kind of a qualitative and a quantitative approach. Qualitative meaning that what are we hearing from the community around our goals and objectives? What are they telling us? What's the feedback that we're receiving? Are we heading in the right direction, or do we need to pivot? And also the feedback that we're getting from you at MPC. And then the quantitative being more like what is the data and models telling us? Are there any adjustments that we need to make informed by that? And so we'll be bringing a lot of that more back to you over the next couple months. And then we're working on updating our financial plan and, again, the congestion management process. So more specifically on the project list update, we've kind of taken this as a three-step process, and I wanted to talk with you about the step one, and then we'll bring back step 2 and 3. So for step 1, it's the submittal of projects where our partner agencies are looking at what was in the 2045 RTP, their most current adopted one. Are the projects, and they're still representative of the plans and policies that are in place at your local communities, Lake County, LTD, ODOT, the cities of Springfield, Coburg, and Eugene. Are those still, have any been completed? Are they still in line with the RTP's goals? Are there any adjustments that need to be made? And that's a several-month process that we go back and forth with your community staff and make sure that that list is reflective of what our region is telling us. And it's not just the capital projects, but it's the programmatic investments that we make as well. And then we'll be evaluating that list based on how does it align with our RTP goals. And that's what we'll be bringing back to you, along with a further review and discussion as you have a chance to look at the whole list comprehensively. In a nutshell, though, this is just kind of a draft, a summary of our draft project list where we are. So the type of projects and the number of projects, and we're seeing kind of a substantive number of projects that are arterial capacity, new collectors, urban standards. Those urban standards mean a street that may just be road asphalt without any curb gutter, sidewalks, any kind of modern amenities that we need to bring to urban standards. And then we're seeing a lot of projects that are multi-use paths and bike lanes and sidewalks. But there's much more to this list that, again, we'll be bringing back to you. We will also couple this list with a dashboard so that both the community members and our elected officials, as you, can engage with to know where those projects are coming. This information that we're gathering isn't just a static approach for us. It's looking at when do we expect these projects to kind of be started or considered over the next 20 years of this plan's lifespan. So it's cut out. There are bands, I guess, 5-year bands that the projects are slotted into, so we can anticipate when to expect them. And I did mention that it's not just our capital project investments, but how are we investing in the programmatic pieces that are so valuable to us? There's a lot of, we'll hear more about these actually in the next presentation, so I don't want to go too deep into them, but some of the pieces that we are investing in as an NPO around safety and livability are the Safe Routes to Schools, programming, the Safe Lane Coalition, Oregon Friendly Driver and Driver Education programs, and then transportation options like May is Bike Month, Walktober, C and B Seen programs, and then get their administration and employer work. And those are all funded through the NPO and really work at the community level to help us get towards our goals. So I've talked a lot about the goals, and just as a reminder, we'll be evaluating the project list against the RTP goals to see how well we are aligning. And those goals are transportation choices, safety, security, and resiliency, healthy people and environment, equity, economic vitality, reliability and efficiency, and system asset preservation. The last time we updated this RTP, it was a very robust effort for us to establish these goals. And at the time, MPC directed us not to create a hierarchy of these goals. They're all important and they're all of value, and they're not hierarchy. This is not intended to be a priority of any means. This is the 7 goals that are in the RTP. So next is our update of the community engagement to date. We've been busy. We had an online open house open from December through February, where we encouraged a lot of community participation through a couple of different exercises in that open house. We conducted a tabling event at the Bethel Neighborhood Association transportation session that was organized by the City of Eugene, but we got to attend. We've provided presentations to MPC, the Eugene Act, Springfield Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Lane Youth Advisory Council, LTD Strategic Planning Committee. And then one thing that was the kind of a statistically significant survey is a reminder that we conducted back in September was our travel barriers and benefits survey, and the consultant presented on that in either October or November to MPC as well. We've produced a fact sheet. We've posted a lot on social media, all with the intent of guiding people to participate in our online open house. We also released a press release to 18 local media outlets. We emailed 51 local organizations requesting participation and encouraging that their communities that they represent engage in that open house. We mailed postcards to 3,000 households in the region that are focused on lower income areas that also experience additional health or environmental burdens, trying to direct engagement from those areas. And then we've tried something new. We posted 100 project posters throughout the region, and they're kind of fun to see if you've seen them around. So the key takeaways that we're seeing is that there's strong support for enhancing active transportation infrastructure. There's a value in maintaining what we've built, not just keeping to build, but how are we maintaining what we have? And there's safety concerns that are arising, and there's barriers that people are identifying that limit use across all of our modes, but especially for biking and walking when it's engaging with vehicle traffic. It would be nice if people felt to see transit with a higher frequency and travel time, and the current transportation system has some critical gaps that could be addressed, particularly for non-motorized travelers. And a few more key takeaways is that there's people appreciate the separated and protected facilities that keep bicyclists and cyclists and pedestrians away from vehicle travel. So that was a nice reinforcement of those investments. Electric vehicle infrastructure received the most interest amongst transportation programs. So people wanting to see investment in that and support for cleaner vehicle technology. Some barriers that people are experiencing include, where the railroads are bisecting pathways or roadways, highways and waterways. They create natural challenges between neighborhoods and destinations. And then most online open house participants also envisioned a future transportation system with reduced car dependency and greater emphasis on active transportation and transit options. Although we don't want to diminish the fact that we did hear people wanting to, not wanting a total auto bias, and wanting to see that autos are also invested in, because that's how people get around as well. So overall, these key takeaways we feel are in line with the RTP, its goals, objectives, and how we've been investing over the last several years. As I mentioned, we'll be bringing more back to you around how have this feedback as well as the kind of quantitative data informed perspective that we have been working on inform the system's gaps and needs and any adjustments that we need to make for these goals and objectives and investments. The next and last piece I wanted to cover was introducing the congestion management process. Again, we haven't talked a lot about this, but it's a key part of what we as an MPO need to be working on and a key document for us to produce. And so it's actually just a little bit of wonkiness here. The Central Light MPO is also designated as a transportation management area, and those are areas, MPOs that have a population of 200,000 or more. And so we qualify for that and get to do a congestion management process because of it. So it's a process that sets up a strategy for how we're managing congestion as a region through the use of travel demand reduction and operational management types of strategies. It's an 8-step process. So we develop, and it's really tied to the RTP. So you'll see a lot of overlap between these two. But we develop regional objectives, define the network of those corridors that are seeing congestion, develop multimodal performance measures, collect data, and monitor on system performance, analyze the congestion problems and needs, identify and address strategies, and then program and invest strategies. So that's where we see the tie with the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, and then evaluate effectiveness. And just by a glance, here are the 2045 CMP's study corridors. They're just called study corridors. We can focus mostly on these tier 1 corridors, and we'll get more into this when we bring this back to you, but I just wanted to provide some kind of high-level overview of those areas that we're talking about, and kind of they're probably not any surprise to you about where we're seeing congestion. Some of the toolkit strategies for these study corridors that are in the current CMP that we'll be reviewing and making sure that they're still the right strategies fall into these categories. They're transportation options, travel demand management, and operational improvements, intelligent transportation systems, transportation system management and operations, TISMO improvements, transit operational improvements, freight good movement, and roadway capacity improvements. And they're indicated in this table and in the CMP as kind of what is the general effort and level of resources required for each of these. And you can see like the transportation options that we focus so heavily on in our region are kind of the lower level of resources required, but we see a lot of output. Where we have a higher level of resource required is the roadway capacity improvement, and that's kind of where our region is like a last resort for managing congestion. So steps in the CMP process for our update will include reviewing and updating the objectives in the CMP, and then coordinating that with the RTP update. We'll be updating the regional travel demand forecasting model, which is in progress now and hopefully will be complete within the next month. But it provides the analysis of Central Line areas, congested corridors, and their performance. And then we'll be looking at the toolkit of strategies. Are there any adjustments that need to be made to that? Any additions that we're doing now that we weren't before? And then we do need to address our federal corrective actions and recommendations. And I'll list these corrective actions because they're an important part for us to be considering and how we make this plan more in line with the federal requirements. So the first is to document an implementation schedule, including responsibilities for advancing those strategies that are in the CMP, and then tying the strategy between the strategies with the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan, and the TIP. So kind of being more clear and more explicit about how those strategies are being implemented. And then develop and implement a process for periodic assessment. So just measuring what we're doing, just being more explicit on that, which now that we have, which will be something that we reset with the last RTP update. So we're able to do that a little bit more clearly with this next one. And then we have some recommendations about expanding on definitions of key terms, describing how the strategies are chosen to impact corridors, and then a recommendation or a thought that we could use a quality level of service measure, such as bike transit and pedestrian. So we'll be looking at those as well. And then I want to touch briefly on the schedule update and next steps. As I mentioned, we have a lot in progress, and we'll be bringing an awful lot to you over the next couple of months, because as all this feedback is being analyzed and as our models are being complete and as the data is all coming together, we have a lot to bring to you. So something to look forward to, hopefully. So the most particular are the evaluation of the project list, our system performance report, looking at the gaps and needs, and then how does that impact our vision goals, objectives, and performance measures. We'll also be bringing back, what's our financial plan look like to pay for all of this? And then we'll need to start the environmental analysis and air quality conformity determination as well. That's all I had for the RTP.
Thank you, Kelly. And this is an information and discussion item only. Are there, first of all, questions for Kelly to clarify what she just presented? I'm not seeing any. Is there any discussion on this issue? I'm not seeing any, but I have a question. As you're going through this process and looking at congestion, I can't remember from the past. Is there an indication of how much more congestion we're seeing in a particular corridor to see if they're all kind of coming up at about the same rate, or if there are specific areas that are becoming more congested faster, like let's say Beltline, for example? And if there's any thoughts on drivers that are changing this. I know as we change our transportation corridors, as we try to control traffic speed, that sometimes pushes people to using other corridors. I just think it would be good to be mindful. And I'm not speaking against infrastructure that slows down traffic, but it would be good for this group, for the MPC, I think, to kind of understand the drivers for change, and are certain corridors experiencing a higher percentage of congestion and growth over what other corridors are. That was kind of a mouthful, but just some thoughts and some interests I have.
Yeah, Chair Groves, thank you. I think that's right in line with some of the reporting back that we need to provide for the CMP when we have that data available, and information that the models can help us understand. So I'll take note of that and make sure that we're hitting on that.
Excellent. I mean, I don't want to personally drive your workload, but it just seems like having that information would certainly help me make decisions on prioritization.
That's great to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to 7D, Transportation Options Advisory Committee Membership Update. Paul, what do you have for us?
Chair, I'm sorry. Kelly just completed 7B on the RTP. Now we're going to do 7C on the work program.
Okay, just hit redo on that. Okay, I guess I'm just trying to work my way through 7 a lot faster than what I should. Okay, 7C then.
I'll try to talk fast so we can get to 7D. Paul, did you want to introduce 7C, or would you like me to?
Well, I'll go ahead and introduce it for a minute or two so you can breathe, Kelly, because I know you have another slideshow to share or something. So in part because we have some new MPC members, and in part because we like to keep you informed, especially after your input about 4 years ago about having more frequent updates about what the MPO is doing. We not only wanted to take you in depth on the RTP update, which is very important and current, and Kelly just did that, but we wanted to give you an overview to start what we thought was going to start this calendar year. Now we're in April, to start this year on the work that the MPO transportation program is doing overall, not just in the MPO, but in some other areas that affect all of your jurisdictions. So this will build on something we started doing with you, like I said, 4 years ago, where we are going to show you a pretty long list of all of the different tasks and projects and how they're timing out over the next couple of years, and give you some indication of how some of those are going to be coming to you for your input and action. And with that, Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I'll also be joined by Dan Callister and Kelsey Moore, so we can each represent kind of our content areas. Kelsey, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't know if everyone has had a chance to meet you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Moore, she, her. I'm the Transportation Options Specialist for Lane Council of Governments, and I do a lot of my work with Springfield as well. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. As Paul said, I'm going to share my PowerPoint here because I like talking PowerPoints. Make sure I have the right one. So yeah, Dan, Kelsey, and I are going to go through our work plan, all of the things that both the MPO but also LCOG as a transportation planning agency are working on. So there's some things that you've already heard about today, but also a few extra projects and programs that we have that you may not have. So our work areas include regional planning, regional funding, regional programs, but also committee facilitation and support, state and local collaboration, and last but not least, our Link Lane transit service. So I'll start and just go over our regional planning work plan. Several I've mentioned already, but include the regional transportation plan and its air quality conformity determination and the congestion management process. We are also required to produce a Title VI plan annual report and the Unified Planning Work Program that Dan just mentioned. One of our upcoming, hopefully, regional planning efforts will be Resilient Lane, which is the grant that we are awarded through FHWA to conduct a system-wide multimodal evaluation of the surface level transportation system countywide. So it's a partnership with the county and how we're doing with resiliency and making a better plan around that for natural hazards and climate change. We'll be working on a regional safety plan starting up later this calendar year. And we manage intergovernmental agreements with ODOT and our partners. We're producing an MPO guide around citizen involvement. So what is the MPO? How do you get involved? And that should be ready hopefully this summer. We produce an annual accomplishments report and self-certification documentation. We look at performance management. So how are we doing as an MPO? And then we also participate in a quadrennial certification review where the FHWA and FTA partners or FDA representatives review our program and how well we're doing against the requirements that we're supposed to do. And that's where, when I mentioned corrective actions in my last presentation, those corrective actions came out of our last certification review. We participate in a statewide funding forecast group. So looking at what are our revenues looking into the future, what are they looking like? And that might help to answer some of Nancy Bell, your questions about what does federal funding look like into the future? We develop and maintained the travel and land use models, which are used not just for us as the MPO, but for all of our local partners as you're updating transportation system plans or doing site level analysis or project or corridor analysis. Some of that forecast data for like what are the volumes looking like into the future all comes from us. And as part of that, we have to look at employment data from the Oregon Employment Department and disaggregate that to the regional level. And then we update and maintain the data portal. So it has a lot of data from census and other sources that tell us about our community and our region. And Dan is going to cover our regional funding. And please just tell me when to change slides, Dan.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yes, I'm going to talk just a minute or two about regional funding. So the big one on the list here is the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. This is the MPO's 4-year funding plan for projects that implement the Regional Transportation Plan. It needs to be kept up to date. It's fiscally constrained. Our current tip covers federal fiscal years 2024 through 2027 and includes 106 projects, and at the moment at least, and over $400 million of funding. So maintaining that tip, processing amendments as projects are added or updated, helping those funds to get obligated, and making sure that those projects are delivered, that takes a lot of staff time. We typically develop a new tip every 3 years, and work has already begun on developing the next tip, the 2027 to 2030 tip, which is scheduled for completion in spring of 2026. Call for projects, the next item on that list, goes along with the tip. As each tip is being developed, the MPO has a call for projects. It's a competitive and public project selection process. Through that process, this body, MPC, ultimately approves the use of the MPO's discretionary federal funding allocation for projects and programs that support and implement the regional transportation plan, supporting those goals and objectives that we'd identified regionally. This is typically about $20 million for a 3-year period. The 2 photos on this slide are actually showing just a couple example projects that were supported with MPO funding. On the top, the Chambers Street Bridge seismic upgrade in Eugene, and LTD's electric bus procurements. So the call for projects really is where the rubber hits the road. It's one of the most tangible ways that the MPO implements the RTP and brings those plans and goals to fruition. We have a call for projects every 3 years or so, and this happens to be that year. So we'll be starting our project solicitation process this summer, and you can expect to hear more about that in the coming months. Another big one under this category is the annual work program. This is the Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP, which I presented earlier this meeting. We bring this to MPC every spring, lays out how our federal planning dollars are going to be used year to year. It also documents all of our federally funded planning work, including our partner agencies, staff time, supporting regional planning, and MPO committees. The other items on this slide are essentially work that we do to satisfy federal reporting requirements related to our funding and ensuring that we're providing the public with access to information in a convenient and useful way. And that's something we've been working on improving lately, particularly the creation of an online tip data portal, which we're hoping to be able to roll out in the near future. And I think we're ready for the next slide, which I believe Kelsey will be presenting.
Thanks, Dan. So our team also does a lot of regional programming. Some of them fall under safety and livability, including the Lane Transportation Coalition. Drew Pfefferly is a staff person in charge of that, and the Safe Lane Transportation Coalition is a partnership of individuals, organizations, and government agencies committing to eliminating fatalities and severe injuries in Lane County's roads. The key focus areas of the coalition are speed reduction, driving under the influence of intoxicants prevention, and safety education and outreach. Drew also oversees our implementation of the Oregon Friendly Driver Program, and that is a free supplemental driver education course aimed at teaching drivers how to safely and legally share the road with people walking, biking, and other road users. It's designed for a wide audience, including professional drivers, new drivers, businesses, and community groups. We also are developing a rural drivers education program. Our team just hired a new staff person, and so that program is in development, and we'll be back soon to talk more about that, which is exciting. Next slide, please. Our transportation options team, we work closely with partner agencies, and our focus is implementing programs that provide the tools, information, and encouragement to support Lane County residents to safely walk, bike, bus, carpool, and telecommute. So big umbrella there. So under that, we have our Safe Routes to School program, and our team supports the implementation of the Safe Routes to School programs. So we support the staff members that are hired through 4J and and the Springfield School District. The Safer to School program, I know you all have heard about it before and had presentations on it, but basically they collaborate with schools to determine needs and opportunities and offer programming to promote walking, biking, and rolling, education classes around biking, walking, school buses, scooter towns, traffic gardens, and more. So our team also oversees two big annual events. One is May is Bike Month and one is Walktober. And so Bike Month has been celebrated in Eugene Springfield area since 2014. And this year, 2025, marks the 12th year of celebration. So we're very excited for that. And throughout the month, community members are encouraged to get out, ride their bikes for fun and exercise, as well as errands and trips. The event just offers a wide range of all ages, all abilities, opportunities for folks to get out and bike. And the idea is once they do that, hopefully they'll continue to do that a little bit more on their own. So it's behavior shift programming. We also have Walktober, and Walktober, as it sounds, is focused on walking, promoting walking in the region. And the 2025 Walktober will happen in October, and it will be the third year. So that's a newer programming for us, and it's been very successful. It offers just all ages walking events. And last year we had over 35, and they included art walks, nature walks, historical walks, team challenges, and then we also offered the coffee shop hop, which is just wildly popular. And we got a lot of really good feedback about the walking programming. Folks felt like it was really accessible in a way sometimes that other programming can be. There can be more barriers. So it was very successful. We're very excited about that. For both Walktober and Mia's Bike Month, we work with a local artist, and that has made the engagement with the community really successful. Folks are really responding to the artwork and the feelings around that. We also do a CMB Scene program. This annual program focuses on collaboration with local service organizations and ensures the direct delivery of transportation materials to those organizations and to the clients that they serve. So some of the examples include the Home for Good, Lane Independent Living Alliance, Willamette Lane, Head Start, St. Vincent de Paul, and more. And we deliver bike light sets, pedestrian lights, reflective beanie hats, reflective vests, and then they distribute those out. And we see a lot of folks wearing them. We also have the Get There Connect program. And the Get There is a free service of ODOT, and it's managed locally by LCOG. It's Oregon's free online trip planning tool, and it can help residents find a carpool, a van pool, transit routes, walking or biking partners. And then folks can log commutes and win prizes for participating. So keep an eye out locally in September. We have the Get There free challenge you'll see promoted throughout Eugene, Springfield, Coburg, and beyond. And those are some of the key recognizable programs that we have. We also offer just transportation options programming in general, specifically in Springfield, Coburg, and rural Lane County. And so that can look like a wide range of programming, outreach, education, and more. There's a big focus on in-person direct outreach and in-person events. Some of the events you might see happening are path etiquette campaigns, a new movers program scheduled for Springfield this year. We also do regional learn to ride events and just a ton of tabling and outreach at events that already exist to talk to folks about their transportation options. And that's it for me, Kelly.
Thanks. To cap things off here, we really, the MPO is focuses strongly of both because we're authorized, we're required to, but also it's just the way we operate on a transportation planning process that's continuing, comprehensive, and cooperative. And a lot of the ways that we go about doing this is through community facilitation and support and working with all of our partners locally and statewide and beyond. MPC, of course, we come to you monthly. We have a transportation planning committee that our staff participate in, and then it's an advisory committee to the MPC. A working level transportation advisory subcommittee. That's again kind of a working group. We have a transportation options advisory committee, and these are all regional committees. Kelsey just mentioned the Safe Lane Transportation Coalition. One thing, a new council that we recently started up was the Lane Youth Transportation Advisory Council. And this is a photo of the Lane Youth Advisory Council. It's from a bike ride that they organized last May. So that council gets to do kind of hands-on, tactile, new urbanism types of projects, and then these types of organizing bike rides. And it's really youth-led. And so what do they want to focus on and how they want to engage? Paul mentioned OMPOC, the Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization Consortium, and LCOG both participates in OMPOC, but also staffs that and facilitates it. And there's a shared mobility working group. Kind of along the same lines, we work a lot with state and local collaboration, mostly through committees, but also participating in managing projects that are statewide influence and importance. The climate friendly and equitable communities, for example, is state required rulemaking. And we're working right now in facilitating the local R areas requirements related to that. We work as the MPO and LCOG. We try to help support as needed the city's transportation system plan updates. LCOG is the contract administrator for the Oregon Travel Study. And I think we've brought that to this committee a couple times, but it's the statewide household activity survey that informs and creates a very robust data set about how people are traveling in our state, and informs the models that need that behavior related data to do better at their job, their forecasting job. We participate in the Oregon Modeling Statewide Collaborative, and that's a statewide collaborative that's very supportive and in travel forecast models and data around that. So we're all trying to understand things. We have the policies that are needed to be understood, and how do we look forward into the future. One of our staff at the MPO is the Public Transportation Advisory Committee's on the executive team. Paul works hard to support Lane Act, as well as some others on our team here. We participate in the STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program quarterly, and the Carbon Reduction Program Consultation Group. LCOG is involved in the development and implementation of an electronic tip platform that the ODOT and our MPO partners at Metro and Salem-Keizer area are participating in. We also participate in a quarterly meeting that brings together MPOs, transit providers, and ODOT on a quarterly basis. And it's a really productive way for us to hear about what we're all doing and how we can support each other's work, but also learn from each other's work. And then finally, LCOG is a locally certified agency, and we participate in that program through, what it means is that we can contract for planning level services with FHWA funds. And so we've taken a lot of procurement related trainings to be able to participate in that and manage funds for us for our planning services locally here, versus ODOT having to do that for us. And then finally, our Link Lane Transit Services, LCOG is a public transportation service provider. And we just started Link Lane in 2020. My favorite thing to say is we started it 3 weeks before the pandemic hit. And so our Eugene to Florence route started again 3 weeks before the pandemic hit. So we learned a lot. But we offer 2 routes, one between Florence and Eugene and one between Florence and Yachats. And we manage the funding for these routes, and we provide these services through contracts to private service providers. And we do all of the reporting and budget management along with that for these services. And fortunately and amazingly, both are seeing rises in ridership annually year after year. So it's been very successful for us. That's all we have. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the MPC? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Kelly, Dan, and Kelsey for the presentation, and thank you, Paul, for introducing the topic. Okay, with that, we will move on to 7D, Transportation Options Advisory Committee Membership Update. Paul, do you want to take this away?
I will, and you'll notice that I've only allowed 5 minutes on the agenda. I will be very brief. This is just to let you know that staff have moved to broaden the representation on a subcommittee to your advisory committee. We have what's called the Transportation Options Advisory Committee, or TOAC, which is a subcommittee, as I just said, of the Transportation Planning Committee, your formal advisory committee. TOAC was formed many years ago, I believe in the 1990s, to advise and really to implement and coordinate the regional transportation options activities. And originally it consisted of members only from your staff of the member jurisdictions of the MPO. Recently, we realized that in order to really coordinate activities, we're doing a lot more in partnership with nonprofits, Cascadia Mobility, one example, and others. And so what we did was we took action a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a little longer, to expand the membership. The voting membership of this advisory committee is still just your staff, but we added non-voting memberships to represent to allow for representation from those other partners. Again, Cascadia Mobility is one example. The University of Oregon is another. There's a list in the packet just to show you how that membership changed. And that's really all I have to say today, is just to let you know that we're broadening our coordination and outreach and partnership to deliver those activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Are there questions from the MPC on this subject? Quiet group today. Okay, we already covered 7E, so we'll move on to item 8, regional broadband update. Unless, Paul, I've missed something else. I think I got it all now.
No, Chair, you're fine. Actually, moving on to 8, regional broadband update. The only hesitation here is I'm looking for the staff person who is presenting.
Here.
And
Jacob's here.
Here is Keith Testerman. Interesting.
Yeah, that's why I didn't. Okay. So let me do 2 things real quick. I am going to rename this person who eluded my view because of the misleading name.
Or we can just call him Jacob.
We could do that.
Remember.
And in addition to changing the name, which I just did, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to this and why we are talking about broadband here at the MPO. So some of you who are around and may recall that back in 2022, the MPO received a one-time roughly $2 million check from ODOT. And that was because the federal government made a special distribution of coronavirus-related relief funds. Those relief funds related to the pandemic were federal funds that went to the state DOTs and were sent to the state DOTs with direction to also suballocate those to MPOs. And ODOT was kind enough in suballocating to our MPO and the other Oregon MPOs to exchange those federal funds for state funds, essentially local funds. And so those funds, that $2 million check arrived at LCOG with literally no strings attached. I still recall the email I got that morning from LCOG's fiscal department that said, "What is this $2 million check, Paul?" And we had advised MPC that this was coming because it technically was transportation funds. We had talked with MPC about how to use this unexpected $2 million. And the bottom line is that because there were no strings attached, no match required, no reporting required, no other federal requirements, we wanted to use it in as flexible a way as possible, but also, as you can guess, partly for broadband. So of the $2 million, MPC approved using $838,000 to kick off a regional broadband strategy effort. And this was back in 2022. The remaining $1.18 million was distributed proportionally to Coburg, Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County. We literally just cut checks to those 4 jurisdictions and sent that $1.1 million on to you. But the $838,000 remained with LCOG, has funded LCOG staff work, as well as, I believe, some other consultant work, but Jake is going to talk to that. And since this money came as transportation money originally and came with MPC's action and approval, we've periodically provided you updates on what's happening with the broadband work. And here's your latest update. So Jake, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, committee, for the opportunity. I got a little presentation here, so let's get that up. You can let me know how this goes. So everyone's seeing that screen? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for that background. That's helpful. Helpful for me to be able to skip a few of the orienting slides that I had prepared. That was thorough and appreciate that. I guess I'll begin with that as context with a huge expression of gratitude from your colleagues, partners, those who work for your various agencies who do the work of broadband, because this funding has made a really significant difference and an impact that just would not have been possible without those funds. So thank you. I'm Jacob Collister. I'm the interim planning manager at the Lane Council of Governments. I've been the broadband lead for some time. Some of you may remember Milo Meacham, who I sort of received some training from and took the baton from in a sense. And I've really enjoyed that work. I also want to recognize Keith Testerman, who I was earlier, but am now Jacob Collister again. Keith is also on this call here, and Keith has been sort of my partner here at the COG and working through this. We have a lot of partners that we'll speak to here, but appreciate your time to talk this through. So why are we here? Paul described that really well. What we want to do is to give you a little bit of an overview of and an update on where things are at with our Lane Regional Broadband Strategic Planning effort. We want to give you some examples of the progress that we've made. We want to give examples of what is left to accomplish, share what's going to happen next, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions, and hopefully you'll have some for us. So I'll skip over this, except I will pull out this. This is in yellow here. This is extracted from the memo that was presented to you all, the committee, when this work was being proposed. And I think this is really sets the stage well. Without a broadband strategy for our region, it is not possible to understand what funding and for what purposes the region should apply for, or to demonstrate the region's readiness for those funds to the federal grant programs. So at that time, the IIJA, ARPA capital projects, funds, these acts that were teeing up all kinds of broadband resources for the entire nation, we had the very clear understanding and sense that we had a lot of work to do to be ready for that. We had a lot of potential, but we needed to get organized and we needed to come up with a strategy. So the strategy is not singular to the federal funding, but the federal funding is really what we led off with and where what we have mostly to report about today. So a couple of underlying concepts here. Hopefully most of you are familiar with this term, hoping that it's really getting out there and people understand it. There is a digital divide. That divide is the gap between people who have access to affordable and reliable internet and the skills and gadgets to take advantage of those, and those who don't have that. It exists. We felt that profoundly during the lockdowns, during the pandemic. It continues to be a significant challenge. Another fundamental concept here is that government involvement is critical in the deployment of broadband, the appropriate deployment of broadband. The government helps with policy, with regulations, with prioritization. They help provide access, so this component of getting it to everyone. They help with the implementation component. Governments are uniquely poised to meet some of the biggest challenges when it comes to deployment. And a piece of that is government funding. So this is something that Keith and I have burned into our minds. This is the Oregon Broadband Program's rollout. So the Oregon Broadband Office was formed just before all this money came out, and they are essentially the pass-through entity for all these federal dollars. So they are the ones who establish our program and our higher level goals and the rules that we'll be abiding by. And a big piece of this is categorizing all locations that are serviceable by broadband into 3 categories: served, underserved, and unserved. The focus is unserved. A secondary focus is underserved, and served is not a focus at all. And so there are these programs that we needed to be prepared, and you can see the time frame here. Each one of these had its own set of rules, its own timelines, its own groups convening around trying to be prepared and to meet its particular aim. But mostly all these really focus on underserved and unserved locations, households. Think of them as households out there in our state. So the way the strategic plan was built was essentially 2 phases. The first phase was this really reactive kind of a triage. We've got to get organized quickly to be responsive to the funding. And a lot of that was just dictated by what the state and the federal government were saying. You have got to participate to make sure we've got our locations correct. You've got to make sure that the information that's going to be used as the basis for these funds is correct. You need to participate. You need to engage. We were able to do that because we had dollars set aside to do that. That's how we were able to participate. And it was an engaging exercise. It really required a lot of attention to stay on top of. And Lane County really became a leader in this area for the region, for other entities who didn't have the same resources. Another component was project identification and funding alignment. So we needed to establish what our priorities were. How are we going to bring the local lens to this? How are we going to prioritize where we wanted to start, how we wanted to phase out the opportunities? And then phase 2 would be the implementation, actually going after, like implementing what the initial strategy was. And then this other piece, which was the things that we have been wanting to accomplish for over a decade. And that is getting coordinated so that we can be ready for the next opportunities in a much more established way. So a group that had been meeting about when all of this got off the ground was we called it the Regional Broadband Planning Group. And it was essentially IT folks and economic development folks working on anything broadband, telecommunications. And this group is the envy of the state. Anytime we get together and talk about this group that we have that convenes monthly, I hear, how did you get that together? How have you found that sort of collaborative synergy with these other entities? It is a really important entity, and it became the sort of ad hoc committee for this strategic planning group. So you can see the entities that are involved here. One of the things we discovered very early, and again, if you remember, phase 1 was we've got to go, go, go. We very quickly rebranded ourselves as the planning and doing group. We needed to not just talk strategically, but we needed to figure out who was going to be doing certain things and how are we going to be ready for these deadlines. So the planning and doing group is what we call it now. Everybody in the state was trying to accomplish the same thing. So lots of regional groups, lots of state groups formed, and we were right in the thick of it. And we continue to be in the thick of these groups. We also have a really strong internet service provider landscape ecosystem here in our area. And so we have strong partnerships with the entities that deploy broadband primarily in our region. They've been really important partners in this as well. So when we came to you last year, when we provided, as Paul said, we provided an update last year, we had already accomplished most of phase one. We had done all the work to characterize, we'd created the maps, we had worked together to try to make sure that the foundation that this work was going to be built on had our sort of blessing of, yes, we've looked at this and we feel like that's the strongest we can do given the time. We also started looking at the data to start to establish priorities. And so we'd done a lot of the groundwork here for what we called phase one. You may remember, I know that the commissioners on the meeting, Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Lovell, you may recall meetings that we had in front of the Board of County Commissioners where we showed sort of the methodology of these different colors represent served, underserved, and unserved. Our strategy, simply put, was to find areas where there were concentrations of unserved and underserved, and areas you'll see in the kind of lighter color. These are the areas where there's already federal funding in place, so they weren't eligible. So what emerged was these concentrated areas, and you'll see how this map evolved here in just a second. At the same time, we were working together with those partners that you saw in that planning and doing group to come up with, at least for that federal funding piece, a vision and some goals. So the vision was to maximize outside funding secured by Lane County agencies and partners to address unmet local needs for accessible, affordable, resilient, high-speed internet connectivity across our county. The goals are pretty straightforward. Broadband should be available and affordable. It should be reliable and resilient, and it should be fast. It needs to be fast enough. This is kind of a condensed set of tactics that I think of as representative. Some of these tactics would be, let's invest in open access fiber. This is a fiber that everyone has access to. It's not proprietary. It's not owned by a corporation. It is fiber that, think of it similar to the highways and the freeways. It's owned by someone whose purpose is to make sure it's available for the best good. Strategically partner with the private sector. The private sector will be a key part of solutions going forward. They have been a key part of solutions that the progress that we've made. Competition is a key part of that. Lots of options so that it keeps everybody sharp. And then make sure we have good information. So this group, transportation group, I'm sure can appreciate the idea of how could we do good planning if we didn't have good data about our networks, about our needs, about our capacity, about the condition of it. We need better information about that. So phase two, at this point, where we are at right now, this last year, we really focused on the response. We came up with phase one, some strategies, some priorities. Since we met with you last year, about 1 year ago, we've really been working on, and it's been a full-time job, to be responsive, to essentially implement the strategy when it comes to federal funds. And we also got a really neat project done that was part of this implementation around mapping and documentation that we'll talk about here. The other stuff in white are things we're going to talk about as kind of works in progress. This is really exciting to share. I don't know, some of you may have read about this. It made its way through some of the media outlets. KLCC did a bit about it. This is a really neat thing to celebrate. This is one of the key measures of success. Can we get dollars from these federal sources for Lane County to serve Lane County households and bring them fast, affordable, reliable internet? This project is the best example of success for the strategic planning process so far. Oregon's broadband deployment program is one that we went headlong into. We identified those focus areas. We worked with the Board of County Commissioners, with our partner agencies. We said, these are the areas we want to focus on. We found a private partner and said, we will give you our endorsement and we will become your partner in this project if you can address these specific areas. DFN was our partner in this. We supported their application process. We secured $8.5 million to serve about 1,900 households, not individuals, households in these locations throughout the county. Stepping in to provide match, which was in part possible because of those SRSA funds, able to support their government and community relations in their project. Let me give you a little bit better map here of the actual impact within Lane County. So this is not closing the digital divide in Lane County, but it is making a significant dent. And so you can see these are areas that were identified as having important concentrations of unserved. And these are areas that between now and the end of 2026 will have fast, reliable, and affordable internet. And so this is a real success of the project right here. And it's hopefully the beginning of the successes, but we're really happy about that outcome. You've probably heard about BEAD. BEAD is a little bit more, well, maybe you haven't. I think I've lost touch with what the average person is probably tracking on with this, but the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. This is a program that has been in the news. It's getting caught up for sure in some of the questions around federal funding. Broadband equity, access, and deployment. What we have heard is that there's a possibility, maybe a good possibility, that this program might be overhauled a little bit. But the consistent thing we're hearing from the people whose opinions we really rely on and respect is that there's still bipartisan support to get this money out there to bring that same internet service in this. And this is the larger pot of money. The broadband deployment program that I just showed you is about $150 million for Oregon. This is about $700 million for Oregon. And so this is a program that's going to make an even bigger dent. There'll be even larger blocks of in fact, the aim is to cover everybody. And so we have pre-qualified to participate in the BEAD program. We've been talking to our ISPs to help make sure we can support them. And we're just kind of crossing our fingers that BEAD proceeds soon. And obviously hoping that it doesn't somehow minimize or vaporize. That's highly unlikely from what we're hearing. So we still have every reason to be optimistic about BEAD. So there's that program rollout that you can see, and here's sort of the components that we've been addressing and moving forward. Neither of these are complete. It's just that we have the kind of strategic components in place, and now we're just kind of doing and supporting those. So with the funding response in place, I want to focus on this mapping and documentation piece. Our region has done such a good job historically of getting things done. What we hadn't done such a great job of doing is documenting it. So lots of great things happening under the ground, through the streets, through conduits, in vaults, in buildings, and not a terrific resource or opportunity to really clearly understand any particular or any kind of comprehensive sense for what those were. So for years, these partners, the folks who work at your agencies who are in charge of understanding where the telecommunication lines go and the broadband, have had to work really hard and had to operate under a little bit of uncertainty, which is not a fun place to be when you're talking about things like 911 service, public safety kinds of assets. And so it's been a real priority to get mapping and documentation updated. Part of the strategic planning process, LCOG convened and organized conversations around this, pursued a vendor, a mapping vendor, to create a collective commons where we could all agree on a certain format. We could have agreements and understandings to put it all in one place, have a sole source of truth, of information, and a way to, when we get a question, hey, is there fiber from here to here, or a circuit's down, where does it go? We can answer those questions, or we're on the pathway to do that. So this is just an example of some of what, so Keith, my LCOG colleague here, has been really busy starting to jump into that, and our other partners have been adding their assets, and we're bringing in a real regional resource for understanding where these assets are that'll help us problem solve, will help us seek more opportunities, and it's really important opportunities. So mapping and documentation, again, not done, but we've got wheels in motion. The strategic component of it feels like it's in place. These other elements that you see, regional coordination, The MPO is certainly a more complex comparison, but if you think about what the MPO does for transportation, we're trying to find a kind of right-sized regional set of resources around broadband. We're trying to be better about dig once. If 8th Avenue gets torn up, if eWeb comes through 8th Avenue and they rip that street up, we've got to get conduit in there. We've got to get assets. That's a very unique project and a very unique opportunity in time. And frankly, we missed 8th Avenue. That's been a bit of a lesson learned. And we're trying really hard to be ready for Franklin Boulevard. So there's been a group that's convened around Dig Once to make sure, hey, when this project goes down, let's make sure we're at the table. We're talking about the fiber and other telecommunications infrastructure in the ground, and we are seizing an opportunity. We're protecting assets and we're seizing opportunity. There's a lot we can do together with policy and advocacy, and there's a lot we can do by being more efficient with our asset management. So at this point in time, we are looking at, we have a document that is currently being internally reviewed that we will be vetting with our planning and doing partners. We're hoping that by this summer we have, and again, the strategic plan becomes a set of here's what we need to do. And there's also quite a bit of here's what we've done. So there's some storytelling in there, along with a list of here's the things that we would recommend going forward. Some of what needs to happen is when the SURSA funds become no longer a resource, we need to make sure we've figured out ways to preserve the work that that we need to do together. So there's some suggestions that will emerge from those recommendations around that as well, to make sure that at least some basic coordination is in place, and hopefully maybe some more robust things. That is the update that we wanted to provide, and happy to take any questions that folks might have.
Maybe before questions, there is one thing that I think might be useful to add to your notes there, Jake, is that we served 1,900 addresses with the BDP project. That was of 10,500 eligible addresses in Lane County.
Right. So a dent, right? It is making a significant impact, and we've got some work to do.
Thank you, Jacob and Keith. Are there questions from the MBC? I see Mayor Van Gordon.
Thank you for the great presentation. I think I have a question and, I guess 2 questions. My first question is, this is a pretty technical process to follow. How do we explain it, or how are you thinking about explaining it to the public where to sort of balance that sort of storytelling about what actually got done versus a kind of a very technical, this is our 3rd committee and we have a governance committee and et cetera, so that they understand that their dollars are actually driving results?
That is a very astute question. Mayor, we're kind of in the middle of this too, because we just had this press release where we released this federal funding that has been secured for a discrete set of areas. And so clarity is something that we're trying to really lead with when it comes to, once we come out to the public with this, let's not overwhelm them with the details or those nuances. Let's be really clear about the opportunity that is immediately in front of them, provide resources to make it clear what this particular opportunity is, what other opportunities lie on the horizon. Another piece of this, which is, and if we go back, in fact, let me show you this again, because this right here is maybe the most kind of concerning piece of how recent events are playing out. So there's a lot of concern about this other piece of funding related to digital equity, which is a lot about what you're talking about, which is we've gone from the technical, solving the technology problems, to the how do we convince people that this improves quality of life, that it improves their quality of life, that they can access it, that they can feel comfortable adopting the ways that it can improve their health, education, work.
Yeah.
There is some concern about how do we get that to the end if this right now, this questions to even the Oregon Broadband Office kind of hit a donk. I mean, it's very hard to get information about these particular programs, but it's such a big part of it. Is that kind of getting at your question?
Yeah, and I think I guess the feedback I have is I feel like I'm a fairly technically astute person, and I've sat through your 20-minute presentation, and I don't know that I could explain to my public what's going on with it. I could explain to them, broadband's good, we need to have better access, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as tying in the federal programs in a way that causes the average citizen, work we're doing to resonate with them about how their life's going to get better, I don't know that I could explain this.
I appreciate that feedback, and I do think the bridge between the technical solutions, the implementation, the fiber on the poles and in the ground to the user is a big piece that we've got to elevate. That kind of policy and advocacy, the coordination to bring in the folks who are good at helping. I mean, because another piece of this is we're going to absolutely need executive support. We're going to need help with those who elect and implement. And so it's good feedback. It's important to make sure folks understand how these dots connect. I mean, for the 1900, it's going to be internet in the next 6 months where there wasn't.
Well, right. And it's just finding that story to sort of tell people. And I think the other question that I have is how are you sort of controlling for the fact, because a lot of these conversations started, I don't know, like 2015, there would begin to be a lot of conversations about, broadband and connectivity. How are you connecting with the fact that some technologies are changing quicker than government planning can respond to it? And I know you've got a lot of partners at the table, but one of the things I'm thinking about, having experienced this the last 10 years, is things we thought were going to be a thing may not actually turn out to be a thing. And so how are you building flexibility into this conversation to make sure we stay, I guess, up to date on the most up-to-date technology?
Great question. That's a great question. I'm going to let Keith answer this question because he's sort of the technical part of our duo and can provide a better answer too.
And somebody can email it to me if it's a little bit of a long answer. So I am conscientious of time here.
I think the short answer to that question at the moment is that even quantum computing technology that is being designed by Microsoft, Google, basically everyone out there is using fiber optics as its base. So the infrastructure that is getting built primarily out of these programs, it's not exclusively, but everywhere that it can be built, it's the priority to build fiber. And our project in Lane County and Douglas County is exclusively fiber builds. We don't have fixed wireless. We don't have coaxial cable, which are what I would consider either legacy technologies or alternative technologies. Right now, there is no other better technology to deliver to homes than fiber. We have not tapped the potential for speeds on fiber optic cables. The theoretical limits are much higher than the lasers that shoot down fiber optics at this moment, in this point in time. So it's the most future-proof product that is available to us as a technology group to date.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Director Moore, Brenda.
I think you're muted, Brenda.
Thank you, Chair Groves. Excellent question. Mayor Van Gordon will be working with our PIOs to make sure that the general public understands that, because this is not about people being able to watch movies or play games. This is about whether or not rural communities can survive. This is about children being able to do their homework. This is about people being able to apply for services from their homes. This is about businesses being able to order supplies, about being able to serve their customers, because the old ways of doing business just aren't going to be aren't going to continue the way that they used to. And so even the way that people process invoices and pay their bills, right? And so in order for rural communities to continue to survive and be successful, they need broadband. And so we need to be able to figure out how to express that to these rural communities in a way that makes sense to them and improve their quality of life. Again, not because it allows them to watch movies or allows them to play games, because it allows them to live their everyday lives in a way that is necessary as things change. And then I just wanted to say something. As Paul mentioned, in 2022, the MPO, which LCOG is the MPO, received this money. And I came to this body asking for the ability to keep part of this money so that we could do this strategic plan. And so I just wanted to thank this body for your support and your trust in allowing us to keep some of this money back. I knew that I have brilliant staff. I knew that your agencies have brilliant staff. And I knew that with this money, we could do amazing things. And this is just the start of that. The fact that we were able to leverage this for $8.5 million, and I know we'll be able to leverage this for more. This is just the start. But I just wanted to say thank you for your trust and your support. And I just think that we have better, bigger things coming. And I think that this is just really fantastic news. So thank you.
Okay, Keith.
Yeah, I just thought I would follow up with, Jacob briefly touched on the equity program that we're not quite sure exactly what's happening with right now. But the gist of that program is to give skills and provide training for people to enter the digital landscape. And so regardless of whether or not that funding becomes available, it's a pretty small pot of money for the entire state of Oregon. And one of the things we all need to think about going forward is how do we keep our community, especially these folks that are probably haven't been exposed to a digital landscape the same way as the people that have in metropolitan areas, will have access to these tools. How are they going to get trained in understanding what a phishing email is? Like those types of like basic security practices around your bank account passwords and things like that. So that's what that equity money is, all about. It's all about digital skills and training. And one of the conversations that's starting to happen, and I would say that the city of Eugene has done a really good job of diving into this and has been talking about it. And are working on ways that they might apply for some of those funds and partner with other agencies to do that as well, is how do we build programs to do that? How do we get that to people where they are, not just the people that want to do it, but the people who need it. So anyway, that's just a food for thought for future conversation.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up in the queue. So thank you very much, Jacob and Keith, for the presentation. And we'll move on to our next steps and agenda build. Paul and Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a couple things I wanted to mention about the upcoming meetings. I'm going to let Kelly go first. She's going to talk mostly about May and June and the Climate Friendly Equitable Communities, or CFEC work. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the summer meetings. So Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Just to reinforce, the RTP will be back both of those meetings as well in the condition management process. So but the one that I wanted to talk more about was the climate friendly equitable communities. We've been before you a couple times. The consultants that we're working with have been before you a couple times, along with ODOT and the Division of Land Conservation and Development. And we're working hard. They're all working really hard to meet our deadline of a submittal date for our CFEC deliverable by June 30th. But that means that we will be back to MPC and for both your May and June meetings. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at a document as I'm talking. So at the May meeting, we intend to bring back the final, a draft of the implementation chapter, which includes the performance measures that we've talked about, as well as baselines and targets that have been revised and refined based on your feedback and all of our partner agency feedback. And then in June, the intent is to bring the final implementation chapter and final performance measures and targets back to you and seek your approval. And then we'll wrap everything up and submit to DLCD by June 30th.
Okay, great. Anything else on this issue, Paul? You done too?
No, a few other things if I could.
Yes.
And Kelly's mentioning that because we really need to ensure that we're able to achieve quorum and get the input on the CFEC work since it is under a June 30 timeline or deadline. I wanted to just quickly check in specifically on the July and August MPC meetings. We also have a timeline to adopt the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan that you heard about earlier, this November. And in order to do that, we need to keep working with you pretty much every month. I noted at the end of the agenda when I usually list the next several months' meetings that July's meeting falls on July 3rd. I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue for a quorum. Obviously, the next day, Friday the 4th, will be a holiday. But, if there's issues around July 3rd that you know of now, maybe speak up. We might have to reschedule it because we think that we need to have a meeting in that month. So please feel free to weigh in right now or let me know if there's going to be an issue. Commissioner Lovell?
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I've got an issue. I'll be out of the country. So sorry.
I'm hoping that we can still achieve quorum through either Commissioner Farr or another alternate. But thank you for letting us know that. And then also in August, that has been more or less a traditional MPC recess month because most of your local councils and commissions tend to take a recess in August, and sometimes you're not available for the MPC meeting. But again, as I just mentioned, we feel that we need to keep this group meeting in order to achieve the RTP adoption in November. And given that the August meeting is early, again, it's the first Thursday of the month, we would like to plan on holding the August meeting as well this summer, if that's not too much of a problem for people.
Thank you, Paul. So anybody else want to weigh in on that right now, or you could send Paul an email? That's the end of our agenda items. Is there anything else from the MPC to come before the group? I do have one quick question, and I apologize because it has to do with 7A, the Unified Planning Work Program. Something I had meant to ask was the ETIP licensing at $21,898. Is that something you could either quickly explain or send an email of I'm assuming that's staff time involved in that, but if it's just for the license, that seems pretty high.
Yeah, happy to give a quick response to that. So that is actually a statewide effort. I had mentioned that we were developing a online data portal for our TIP project information. It's a publicly accessible information database. So yeah, it is a statewide license for the 3 big MPOs and ODOT. That is our contribution to that annually. And it's a 5-year contract, and we're going to assess after that 5 years whether it's worth continuing.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And with that, I think that's it for the meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.